So he comes back from Moscow grinning, says he's got a ceasefire deal in hand.
Let me guess, he didn't.
Not even close. He got Putin's demands backwards and thought Russia was leaving territory when they're actually telling Ukraine to give up more.
So the guy walked into the Kremlin and came out thinking he'd won, when actually he'd lost.
Exactly. And now Trump's meeting Putin in Alaska, which Russia's been hinting they want back.
Careful. Next thing you know, he's swapping Alaska for a golf course.
Yeah, or just announcing, turns out Putin already owns it. Lot of sea real estate in Alaska.
Maybe Witkoff told him that in the wrong order too.
Welcome to Dictators v Democrats. I am Theo Althorpe Mullis, and this fine gentleman is my charming co-host Eric. And this is the Democracy Brief, where you get the news from every front in the war between the dictators and the Democrats the world over that's happened this week. If you enjoy this work, please do like, share, and subscribe. On to the Ukrainian front. It's pretty grim. Steve Witkoff might be one of the worst diplomats in all of human history. And I'm not being dramatic about this. Given the stakes that he's dealing with, it could genuinely turn out to be true. Before becoming Trump's special envoy to the Middle East and apparent chief negotiator, Witkoff's foreign policy experience was, well, zero. And perhaps he visited some foreign golf courses, because he was basically Trump's golfing buddy. And it shows. Witkoff has reportedly relied on Kremlin-provided interpreters in past meetings with Putin. And this is just diplomacy 101. You always bring your own interpreter. On Wednesday last, Witkoff flew to Moscow, just as Trump's deadline for Putin to agree to a ceasefire passed, with nothing from the White House. When Witkoff came back, he flashed his trademark gormless grin and announced that a deal may have been reached. The problem is, it's not the deal that he thought it was. According to the German outlet BLD, Witkoff misunderstood the Russian position entirely. He apparently mistook Putin's demand for Ukraine to withdraw from Zaporizhzhia, Kherson and Donetsk, areas which Russia claims but does not fully control, for an offer for Russia to withdraw from Zaporizhzhia and Kherson. He's also misunderstood Putin's so-called ceasefire, thinking it was a general one when it's actually just a pause on attacks on energy infrastructure and long-range strikes on Ukrainian cities. It's bonkers. And now Trump is set to meet Putin in Alaska, which Russia has also been making noises about reclaiming. I mean, just look at this. Trump seems to be with him there, though, as you can see from what he said here.
Just do this. Let's do this. It's going to be a big thing. We're going to Russia. That's going to be a big deal. What happens, happens. I'll let you know what happens. You'll be the first to know.
Christ. I can't believe I have to say this, but Mr. President, Alaska is in America. They voted for you in the last election. Not only that, but Trump has again blamed Zelenskyy for starting the war. Just look at this.
They need, but I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders. I was a little bothered by the fact that Zelenskyy was saying, well, I have to get constitutional approval. I mean, he's got approval to go into war and kill everybody, but he needs approval to do a land swap, because there'll be some land swapping going on. I know that through Russia and through conversations with everybody, to the good, for the good of Ukraine. Good stuff, not bad stuff. Also, some bad stuff for both. So there's good and there's bad. But it's very complex because you have lines that are very uneven, and there'll be some swapping, there'll be some changes in land, and the word that they will use is, they make changes. We're going to change the lines, the battle lines.
And President Zelenskyy is holding firm, telling world leaders that the answer to the Ukrainian territorial question is already in Ukraine's constitution. No one will deviate from this. The EU has released a statement confirming their support for Ukraine and demanding that Ukraine have a seat at the table in any negotiations. And meanwhile, in a bizarre twist, Putin gave Witkoff an Order of Lenin medal, awarded posthumously to the traitorous son of an ex-CIA official who joined the Russian army and was killed in Ukraine. And on the battlefield, Russian forces may have broken through towards Dobropilya, cutting off the road to Kramatorsk. I've been to Kramatorsk, and the situation is grim. If this war is lost, Europe being caught with its pants down, essentially, at the start of this war, and Europe's inability to really support where support is needed, means that Europe has lost it too. And on to the Colombian front. Presidential hopeful Miguel Uribe has died 2 months after being shot in a targeted attack. The 39-year-old senator was hit by 3 bullets, two to the head, on June 7th at a political rally in Bogota. Paying tribute, his wife called him the love of my life, and the teenage suspect, though, has no clear motive. Uribe's killing has revived dark memories of Colombia's decades of political and narco violence. And former President Alvaro Uribe saying, "Evil destroys everything. They have killed hope." And US Secretary of State Marco Rubio pledged support for Colombia in seeking justice. On to the Chinese front. On August 2nd, onto the Chinese front, and a wave of protests in the Chinese city of Jingyu. On August 2nd, a video appeared online showing a group of teenage girls bullying another in quite an unpleasant fashion. Now, anything like this video would be censored into oblivion, but this one went viral, sparking protests across the city and clashes with police, and of course, frantic censorship to try to shut it down. And one video, confirmed by The Guardian, showed people chanting, "Give us back democracy, reject bullying, serve the people." This anger wasn't just about the bullying incident, it was about trust and people's trust that the perpetrators will see justice. The parents of the victim literally knelt in front of a local official, begging for justice. An analyst, Kevin Slayton, said that people in China may feel that local authorities don't handle cases fairly, and that there's an increasing sense of frustration with local party officials and police. When protests grow, the crackdowns that inevitably follow in China only make people more angry. And these small local protests are not uncommon and often widen into something larger. This is why Beijing fears them. And the censors are hard at work. The Guardian tried to speak to one witness who refused, saying that the police had given them a verbal warning. On to Terra Firma, where we have some reasonably good news. Some science, and some good science. Germany's Wendelstein 7X stellarator, a type of fusion reactor, just set a new world record for plasma generation in that kind of reactor. Unlike nuclear fission, splitting atoms, fusion, well, fuses them. Doesn't it, buddy? It's clean, limitless, and leaves no dangerous waste. The challenge has always been sustaining the reaction. It takes an enormous amount of energy to get these things going. You need to keep a hydrogen isotope like tritium encased in plasma, heated to 100 to 150 million degrees Celsius, held in place in a magnetic field so, everything around it doesn't melt. And that takes so much energy that it's only been relatively recently that more energy has been gotten out of the fusion reaction than has been put in to ignite it in the first place. And thanks to progress like the W7 reactors, like the jet reactor in Scotland, commercial fusion appears to be even closer. Although there is a joke within fusion science that fusion was always 20 years around the corner. And on to quick news from other fronts. In Mali, dozens of soldiers have been arrested over an alleged coup plot. In Palestine, Israel's cabinet approves a plan to seize Gaza City entirely, and 5 Al Jazeera journalists have been killed in a targeted IDF strike. In Britain, mystery areas of China's new super embassy have sparked deep security concerns, with Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner calling on the Chinese to explain what these areas are to be used for. And on the South China Sea front, a Chinese warship rammed, another Chinese warship, while chasing a Philippine vessel near Scarborough Shoal, a disputed area between Philippines and China that is part of their infamous 9-line. This includes things like artificial islands that they are building to try to claim territory as theirs. In other words, a flavour of imperialism. And finally, on to the culinary front, I have booked cream tea and scones for the weekend. Peak Britishness, highly recommend it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Blundering diplomats, fusion breakthroughs, and a war that does not look like it's going to be ending anytime soon. The world is changing fast, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. The fronts are constantly shifting in the war between democracy and dictatorship. Stay informed, stay sharp, and remember, democracy is non-negotiable. Thank you very much indeed. If you enjoy this kind of content, please do like, share, subscribe, hit the little bell thing, and let me know what you think is likely from the Trump and ow, you little fucker. And let me know what you think is likely from the Trump and Putin meeting in Alaska, which I must remind the president is part of the United States, on Friday. Nothing, something awful for Ukraine, or perhaps somehow something good? Let me know in the comments below. Goodbye.